Hey, good morning. Yes, it is. Up and at 'em. It's Monday, August 19th. So, I had a chance this weekend to watch a few other videos because it's raining like cats and dogs here. Couldn't get much other stuff done. So, that's why I had a few extra videos I put out. But what I saw was a lot of people slamming John Deere, and I've seen some of you guys comment on it in the comments about how they sent, emails to people telling them to they're being let go. And then I heard that there was workers, they were taking a segment of the population, the older segment, 40 and above, that were the higher paid employees, and slicing their jobs, moving all the jobs to Mexico. Stay tuned. Alrighty, welcome back. Yes, it is. It is the weekday, Monday through Friday. Today is Monday the 19th. And it's available by podcast if you're interested in listening to it. So, I am not going to be another one that slams John Deere. I'm not a true John Deere follower. I mean, I have John Deere tractors, but all my tractors are older, 20 plus, some 40 plus. I have a John Deere riding lawnmower that I bought used. And, I mean, I was watching different videos how they were slamming John Deere. And I'm thinking, I need to get to the root of this because it doesn't sound like John Deere. And I come across a couple of different channels or informational packets on what was really going on when it comes to John Deere and Mexico. And it was kind of broken down, Part of it is, I'm part of the baby boomers, okay? And we were a big crowd. Some families, 5, 6, 7 kids, right? And when it came our time to have kids, we were looking at maybe 1 or 2. So the population that's following us is not as big. And, it changed. During my growing up, people were pushed towards, doing that a lot of kids were pushed towards BOCES for vocational to learn a trade, whether it be carpentry, automotive, you name it. BOCES was a great, and a lot of my friends would do like half days there. They would early in the morning till noon. Then from noon on, they would do other stuff back here at the school, English, arithmetic, and that stuff. But then we wanted all our kids to go to college and get into management, get into tech, right? So a lot of kids went to college, and now that's kind of flip-flop. Now the vocational jobs that need filling aren't being filled because everybody went to college and there's not as many jobs there anymore, right? But any place you go look, you'll see help wanted. And I've been a person that blamed the next generation of being lazy because I was seeing so many jobs available. I'd like to say that the next generation is being a little more pickier. But that's what happens in an economy. If you run into less tradespeople and there's a shortage, well, then there's a supply chain issue, right? And that's what was going on with Deere. They weren't anything new. I mean, if anything, they were kind of late to the game. And when I say the game, almost every corporation 20 years ago, 25 years ago, was sending all of their factories to China. Because China was cheap labor. They were hoping to break into their markets. And the consumer dictated what these corporations were doing. These corporations can't make money unless you're spending money for them on their products. And they would put out products of premium products made in the USA and products made in China. And 9 times out of 10, consumers would buy the Chinese because it was cheaper. They weren't willing to pay that premium price for a USA-made piece of equipment. But if you really do some digging, you'll find out that not just John Deere, you got Bobcat, AGCO, I mean, all of them are going that direction. And they're not shutting the plant down here in the U.S. and building a new factory there and moving to Mexico. No, because the other thing they talked about was the supply chain. During COVID, we really found out that the supply chain was in rough shape, right? You couldn't get things. And containers, were all over to China, and stuff was there, but it wasn't completed. They lacked steering wheels, tires, what have you. So they were at the whim of China, basically waiting for their parts to come so they could get their stuff back together, it's assembled, which is everything is assembled here now, and out to the consumer. With Mexico, it's right next door. There's no problem with transportation. There's no problem with, you probably get a better quality product because it's easy for some guys from Deere over here to go over there and do quality control. I feel bad for the American worker to a certain extent, but I think wages have in certain sectors have got out of hand. I'm not saying that an auto worker isn't worth $20-$30 an hour, but $60 to $80 an hour. And we wonder why our vehicles cost so much. I'll be honest with you. My last Ford, the sticker price on it was $62,000. And in our area, $62,000 could buy you a home to live in. What's more valuable, a fancy truck or a home? If you don't have a home, I would hope you say a home. But the reason that we're paying these big prices is because the cost, what goes into, and the cost of producing that product. And yes, John Deere has shown record profits, but they're one of the tightest ships I've ever seen. They don't normally, when I was selling parts online, okay, you couldn't even say an aftermarket part that goes to a John Deere blah blah, or a John Deere part number goes to, because John Deere had on their staff people looking for just that. and you get what they call a Vero, and that is trademark infringement. And heaven forbid if you were ever caught selling a new John Deere part, and you were part of a dealership, or they would shut you down. That's how tight the ship was. I've heard that they got rid of people that were 40 and above because those guys were the highest paying jobs, and they're shipping those to Mexico. And I was reading in some of the comments, and there was a guy that said, I worked for Deere all my life. And he said one of the biggest problems they had was absenteeism. And people just, you're paying that big money and stuff, but when you can't get people to pass a simple drug test. See, that happened up here in the mines. A new company took over the mines, and they started paying these kids stupid money. And these kids, it didn't take long, and these kids were into drugs. And they were finding needles down in the headings. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't personally want to work with somebody that is on a medication that is going to change your mood and stability, especially with heavy equipment. And those things come along with it. We pay them big money. You're asking for it. Somebody else was saying that they're going to get peanuts over in Mexico, and different ones have said no, that there's a $18 cap. If the wages are under $18 an hour, then the import tax, I don't want to say this wrong, but there's less of a tax on it. Do I feel bad for the workers that are going to lose their jobs? Yep. But you can't sit there and cry over spilt milk. You can't blame a company for trying to stay solvent, even though John Deere has made record profits. That's what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to make profits for their stockholders. But if you do some investigations into it, you're going to find out it's not just John Deere. Bobcat's doing it. Agco's doing it. All of the manufacturers are doing it. And they're looking at Mexico for the biggest reason, supply chain, and they have an abundance of workers looking for work. And if we do something like that, we've tried this before. If you move factories over there, will it stem the flow of people coming across the border? And some will say yes. Maybe to a certain extent. But the problem is when you start dealing in Mexico, as far as I'm concerned, I don't know this 100%, but I think you're dealing with cartels. I think all your politicians and your police departments are in the bag. And these companies are going to have to make arrangements with cartels. And I can't see the cartels paying $18 an hour for anybody. That's how they're making their big money, is off from low wages, sending drugs across the border, mules, and people paying to get to the U.S. And they're not all coming from Mexico. Just a certain segment is coming across from Mexico. They're coming from all over the world, including China, for God's sake. So I'm just kind of trying to give the other side of it, the business side of it, instead of the emotional side of it. I tend to look before I leap. So after hearing a number of different ones, going off on John Deere for what they're doing, it's, well, there's got to be more to it. And there always is more to it. Is it right or wrong? Well, it's up to you, I guess, to make that call. I know for me, it's neither. That's the way capitalism works, You try to find a large labor pool that you can pay less an hour to and get a lot of stuff done at a cheaper rate. That's supply and demand. So I'm going to start wrapping this up. Don't take my word for it. Check it out. Go look. See what's out there for information and find your own truth. That's the way I say it. To just kind of reiterate, it all starts with, it's the economy, stupid. All right? So you got us baby boomers. There was a gazillion of us, so there was a lot of work. There was less work than what there was population. The population behind us is less because we've had less kids and tried to push them towards college instead of vocational. But the one thing nobody's explained to me is prior to COVID, all those jobs were filled, all right? And then you take 2 years of COVID and everything starts back up. But now you don't have the people to fill those jobs. Where are they? Where are those people? Did they die off in COVID? No. Some people have yet to come back to the workforce. And I've said this in other videos to try to get these people back, is we're not blaming you for COVID and what happened during COVID, but enough's enough. You need to come back and get back to work and become, a good force of nature per se, right? So less people going for vocational, and because we told our kids to get better jobs, go to college, get management, techie, whatever you want to call it. So now we swap, because when I was growing up, vocational was big, and then you had college, and this is how crazy it was. It's the way my school did it was, if you could pass Regents, then they didn't want you going to BOCES. They felt you were college material, and that's what you were going to be. And I used to get snarky sometimes at my friends that went to BOCES because they were having a blast. And here I was. I had extra courses that I had to take. I had to score a lot higher on those tests, the Regents versus the non-Regents, to go on to college. And that's changed. You have more people going to college and being overeducated for the positions that are available. And a lot of them are saying this is beneath me. But growing up, you took any job available, and then you use that for a stepping stone. And I'll tell you, it's always easier to find another job when you're employed than it is when you're unemployed. And if you're unemployed, make that your job, to go out and find a job. Nobody's going to come pounding on your door begging you to go to work for them. You need to put forth the effort. So then that other thing with the baby boomers, what was going on over to China is China was becoming overpopulated, right? So they put into effect and told their people no more than one child per family. And now they're running into the same thing, and from what I understand, they're going to be hurting here in the next 5-6 years because the big population, like the boomers, are all getting older and dying off, and there's nobody there to fill the jobs of all the infrastructure they have now with all these different companies. And they're not going to be the main force when it comes to jobs and products, e-commerce. So you have that going on too. But I still think you're going to have problems even in Mexico because of how Mexico is being run. I watched this when they started going overseas. It was one or two, and then the one or two were undercutting everybody else, and everybody had to move that way. And they had these guys, what they called the axemen, that were coming into corporations and just axing jobs. And they were sending people that were qualified over to China to teach that person how to do their job, to take their job. Yes. Will the people that got laid off from Ford or from John Deere be able to find work? Yeah, they'll be absorbed into the community, but probably not anywhere near what they were getting for wages. With anything, do your own research. You know, you're always going to find it somewhere in the middle of the ones that hate John Deere, the ones that love John Deere, and the ones like me that are whatever. So on that note, you guys have a great Monday, and we'll catch you back here bright and early tomorrow morning. Again, thanks so much for watching.